Hello everybody, and thank you for watching this video. In this video we are going to go over purchasing. I know chapter 4 goes over purchasing and receiving, but for the purposes of this video we're just going to go over purchasing. Receiving will come later in a different video. What can I say about purchasing before I go on? Purchasing is actually very important for a couple of reasons actually. One, for instance, what if you don't have enough and you run out of something? Well, the effect is that you're probably going to make a few people angry. I think the underlying principle there is if you have nothing to sell, you can't make any sales. So under purchasing can definitely affect your sales, but also not controlling your purchasing. I mean, what does your inventory represent? Well, really, it represents money, right? We pay suppliers for their food products. Say, we run in a hamburger place. We buy all the ingredients that we use to make hamburgers, and we do that with money. So your inventory, when you walk into a walk-in fridge or a freezer or anything like that, you're looking around at all the products you have in there. Well, really what those products are money. And just like in our personal lives, we make budgets so that we don't overspend. In purchasing, we have to look at our inventory as money and not overspend on our inventory, because it's items that cannot be turned back into cash really quickly. Well, I guess it could be, but assuming that you have an overly large inventory and you've overpurchased, it cannot be turned into cash really quickly, so it's important to control that. So whose responsibility is it to purchase items? The chef could do it. There we go. The chef could do it. You could have a specific purchaser, or the steward could do it. A manager could do it. In a lot of cases, we do. We just purchase different things, but managers could do it, and so could the owners. The idea here is that only one person should be responsible for the purchasing, so they can be held accountable to their purchasing practices. The only thing I would add to this is that anybody can purchase as long as they're knowledgeable about doing it. Okay, they can be trained and stuff like that, but again, assuming they've been trained, we want to make sure that they're knowledgeable on the subject so that we can hold them accountable. So what kind of things are we going to purchase? And I mean, there's a little bit of a focus on here on food, but there's a lot of things that we're going to purchase. We have to purchase office supplies. We have to purchase beverage supplies, so liquor and stuff like that. But for the purposes of this video, at this point in the course, we're talking primarily about food cost. We'd have to purchase one of two different kinds of items. First of which would be perishable items. Those are food items that have a typically or a relatively short shelf life and can go bad in the short term. We also have non-perishables, which have a typically longer shelf life. To give examples of both, and I'm sure you can think of a few, non-perishables would be things like canned goods, anything that's been dried or cured for the most part, like grains. Well, not that those have been dried or cured, but grains are non-perishables, dry noodles, things like that. Whereas perishables, that can go bad in the short term, are usually things like fresh meat, fresh fish, can be some produce, some vegetables, as well as fruits. Okay, so overall, those are the two categories of things that we're going to purchase. So before we start to actually purchase things, we have to develop quality standards for the items that we're going to purchase, which means that we have to develop standard purchase specifications. A standard purchase specification is a list of quality standards that we use to identify the product. We also use these so that we can verify that when the products come in, they are exactly what we wanted to purchase. They can also be useful in menu preparation. and also eliminating misunderstandings between the purchaser and the supplier. Also allows for competitive bidding. If you know exactly what you want, it's a lot easier to send that um, purchase specification out into the industry, or sorry, out into different suppliers, and it would allow them to better quote on those particular items if you're using competitive bidding as a purchase method. It will allow your receivers to check the food when it's received, and that's really important because sometimes people make mistakes, and suppliers are no different. And why would you receive something that you didn't order or that you can't use in your menu? So it's important that we build quality standards around all of the items on our menu, or the ingredients that we're going to have to make those menu items. Here we have an example of a standard purchase specification. This is for a Black Angus strip loin shortcut. Okay, and again, it's just a list of all of the quality descriptors that we're looking for in this particular item. For instance, it would have an IMPS number of 180. It would be boneless with a 25 centimeter trim. It would be Canadian AAA beef. It'd be from range number 2, shipped in a minimum of a 5.5 kg case to a maximum of 6.5 kg case. It would have a 1 to 2 centimeter fat cap. It would be chilled upon delivery, and it would be free of any objectionable odors and no evidence of freezing, suggesting that it is in fact fresh. So having described exactly what you're looking for this particular Black Angus strip loin, it would be really difficult for a supplier to decide whether they can supply that or not. They either have this or they don't. So it allows them to, well, it makes your job a little bit easier when you're deciding who to who to use as a supplier. Now we can move on to some quantity standards for our purchasing. In order to develop these, we need to have a few things at the ready. The first is a market quotation list, and this is a form used by a purchaser to take daily inventory, determine the proper order quantities, record market quotations from vendors, and then select the most appropriate vendor to use based on those market quotations. Okay. Another quantity standard that we have in industry is our par stock. Our par stock is the maximum amount of an item that we want on hand at any given time. And there's a couple of things that would determine your par stock. The first thing that comes to my mind would be space. You know what I mean? If you only have enough space for 100 cans, you cannot have any more than 100 cans because you don't have the space. Okay. The market quotation list is used for a couple of other things, which we'll get into. I have an example, and I'll show you that in class to what one would look like. Yeah. Now, in determining appropriate order quantities, we can use two different methods. The first of which is the periodic order method. Okay. And how to calculate that, or how to determine the amount to order, is we would take the amount required for the upcoming period. We would subtract the amount presently on hand, and then we would add our desired ending inventory. And that would give us the amount to order. Our desired ending inventory is basically the amount that we want on hand to last until the next delivery. Okay. In terms of when to use the periodic order method, I would use this when order delivery days or order timings are relatively far apart. For instance, if you only get a delivery, once every 2 weeks, I would use the periodic order method. because it takes into the account the amount that's needed for the upcoming period, and it adds in the amount you want left over to last until the next delivery. Okay. So this is how we calculate our desired ending inventory, which is used in the calculation of the periodic order method. Again, this is the amount that would be sufficient until the next delivery is received. And how we calculate that is we take our daily usage, multiply it by the number of days in the delivery period. Okay, so in the example I have down here, we use 2 cans of tuna per day, and there are 5 days in the delivery period, which means our normal usage would be 10 cans. Our desired ending inventory, on the other hand, is our normal usage plus a safety factor. Okay, so we take the 10 cans normal usage, and we would add a safety factor. Now, how do we determine the most appropriate safety factor? It's hard to say. It depends on the item. The safety factor is basically a buffer that you're adding to your desired ending inventory for random, unexpected fluctuations in sales. For instance, our normal usage is only 10 cans. So I guess the appropriate safety factor here would be a little bit higher, so around 50%. If, on the other hand, our normal usage was really high, the safety factor might be a little bit less, would be smaller. But again, the safety factor is chosen by the purchaser or the operator just as a buffer, or like a just in case portion of inventory in the event that sales go up drastically and you need more. Okay, so in this case we take 10, add 50% of 10, which is 5. So 10 plus 5 equals 15 cans as a desired ending inventory. Okay, if you wanted to do this in a calculator, instead of just knowing that 50% of 10 cans is 5, you could take your 10 cans plus 1.5, put a 1 in front of the 50%, and that equals 15. Okay. Our next order method is the Perpetual Inventory method, and this method is characterized by taking your par stock, subtracting the reorder point to give you a subtotal, then you add your normal usage until delivery, and then that will give you your reorder quantity. Looks pretty similar to the periodic order method, with just a few differences. We'll have the opportunity to practice both in class, and yeah. In terms of which one I use in industry, I typically use the Perpetual Inventory method. I take a daily inventory, and when I guess, okay, let me give you a little bit of background to this. Say I'm ordering liquor, or say vodka, Smirnoff vodka. I know that I can't have any more than 4 in stock at any time. My reorder point is usually around 1, which gives me a subtotal, in this case, of 3. And then if I add in my normal usage until delivery, which is 1 sometimes, it gives me my reorder quantity of 4, which is also my par stock. Some determinants of maximum quantity of perishables on hand, or even the par stock of perishables. Some ways to determine those, or that, is the actual storage space that you have. If you have a lot, then you can keep a higher quantity of those items on hand. If you have a smaller space, it means you keep less. Sometimes management or ownership will provide a total value of inventory that you can have on you at any time. The higher amount or the higher dollar value of that inventory, assuming that you have the storage space, means that you can have a higher par stock. The lower that dollar value means the less stock that you can have. The desired frequency of ordering. If you order, say, daily, and you're purchasing correctly, technically you don't need a very high maximum quantity of something on hand because you can easily be replaced the next day. Usage in terms of how much you're using for each item. Say your usage is very high and say your frequency of ordering is very long, so you only get one order a week, but you use a lot of that particular product, you would dedicate a lot more space, you would hope, for that item based on its usage, and you would have a higher quantity of that particular item on hand, or a higher par stock. Okay, which is also kind of connected to the supplier. A purveyor is a fancy word for supplier. Say we only, so say we ordered, we could order 5 days or 7 days a week. We wouldn't need to have a very high par stock because we can order so frequently. However, if it only came one time a week, or we only got one order a week, we would need a higher maximum quantity because we only get it in once a week. Try to think of a beer fridge full of kegs, right? You only get a delivery once a week for each keg. You would need to have a higher volume of kegs as a result of only getting that delivery once a week. However, if it was given every day, you would only ever need one on hand because it could easily be replaced the next day. So as a restaurant or a hotel, who are our suppliers? There's a bunch of different suppliers, some more common than others in my opinion, but they are all suppliers to food service operations. We have wholesalers like Summit Foods, like Cisco, things like businesses like that. We also have local producers, manufacturers, if we get it straight from the manufacturers, which is can be unlikely at times. Packers, local farmers, and we've seen this supplier, the use of this supplier increase over the last couple of years because of restaurants using local sustainable food items, and buying local, trends like that, and that's why we've seen the increase of local farmers as suppliers. We also have retailers. I only ever use retailers when I'm in need of a product very badly. When I say retailers, I mean places like Fertino's, Longo's, Loblaws, places like that. And the reason I only use those when I'm out of something or when I need something desperately is because the price is a little bit higher when compared to using wholesalers. There are also cooperative associations, and internet suppliers. Again, if I had to say which one was most prevalent in the industry, I'd say you're either looking at wholesalers or local farmers. In terms of getting prices for the items that you're going to be ordering, there's a couple ways you can do it. You can use the internet and email your suppliers for price lists. You can call them and find out the prices. I don't know if you're going to use that one so often because it takes a lot of time. There are quotation sheets obtained by the mail. We see operational supply businesses do this a lot, like Staples for office products. We also have information supplied by salespeople. We see this with more so with beer sales reps. They'll come by the restaurant. They'll try and offer you new and upcoming popular types of beers. They'll give you sales information, sales sheets, so you can see all the prices for various products. They also tend to come by at the worst possible times, like in the middle of lunch. We also have direct links with suppliers using the internet. We see this a lot with centralized purchasing systems, as well as some companies use this a lot, are using this increasingly now with the better understanding of e-commerce. So places like Staples, or suppliers like Staples, for instance, you can go on their website, set up an account, and um, do the ordering straight online, but it also has the prices there as well. But we also see it with suppliers like Summit, Cisco. For instance, I have a direct link with Summit. I know their prices at any given time. I can also place orders through that. And again, that's a form of centralized purchasing, which we'll go over in just a second. Centralized purchasing is a form of purchasing where you only really use one supplier, and that supplier warehouses a ton of products. One key example of this is Summit Foods. They keep a wide range of products in inventory, and because they have so much space and so many people use them, they can usually purchase a lot of those products in volume and pass the savings on to the restaurant or hotel. So their purchasing power is a lot higher than other suppliers, so you get the lower price. Because they have so much inventory on hand at any time, no matter how much you want to order, you'll get. And it's fairly reliable. You also have a greater choice of markets because they have a wide range of items that they keep in inventory. You also have a wider range of selections for products to buy, which is good when you're changing up your menus and things like that. And say you were in a chain, like a restaurant chain, it reduces dishonest purchasing in specific units. So you're all using the same supplier, it's the same quality, you get the same price, and it shouldn't be any different for any unit in that particular chain. So now we're getting to the purchase order. Say you've done your daily inventory, you've determined the correct or the suitable order quantities, you've decided who you're going to purchase from and how when you're going to purchase it for. You would then create a purchase order. A purchase order is essentially a form that we send to a supplier or give to a supplier, showing them that we intend to purchase items from them. The purchase order also kind of lets them know that they can bill us for the products that they delivered. The purchase order will include the item's name that we want to purchase, the specification number if they have one, the amount we want to order, the price that we were quoted, the extended price, which is just the order quantity multiplied by the quoted price. It'll have the total price for the order, it'll have the vendor's information, a purchase order number for your records. It just helps you keep everything organized. Trust me, when you get into the industry, purchase order numbers are very important. It'll have the date that it was ordered, the delivery date that you would like it to be delivered by, who it was ordered by, who it was received by, and any delivery instructions you might have or comments. These are there so you can tell them, on the delivery date, we'd like it to be delivered between 2 and 4. That way we can receive it properly, and your suppliers will take that into consideration. This is also important because sometimes suppliers will show up at noon and drop off a whole bunch of products. Well, what are you doing at noon? Well, you're busy. You're busy running lunch service or something like that. You wouldn't be able to spare somebody to go and receive that delivery. So you would have them, or you would instruct them to deliver it during a less busy time so somebody can actually go and receive it properly. Finally, for purchasing, we're going to be talking about different purchasing methods and maybe which one is more realistic or common in industry. First, we have one-stop shopping or one supplier. We've seen this more with centralized purchasing systems. From my experience, this is probably the best purchasing method because it keeps everything in one spot, and that way you're not dealing with like 1,000 different suppliers. Although you will have different suppliers for novelty items, but this will drastically reduce the amount of suppliers that you have, so that everything is kept organized into one supplier. For instance, if you have only one supplier, then you will only have maybe 1 or 2 invoices from them a week. However, if you have 8 different suppliers supplying you, that is 8 different invoices that you need to inspect, review, receive, and eventually pay. So having using one-stop shopping as a purchase method is very advantageous for just keeping it simple and organized. We also have an open bid. So once you've established your standard purchase specifications for each item, you would send that out to all the suppliers for that particular item. Then they would send you back a quote for it or a price, and you would select the best vendor. This is very time consuming, and again, in order to keep it simple, we want to make sure that we're not using 1,000 different suppliers. So this can mean if you use this and the price of the item is fluctuating so much, you'll have a different supplier every single week. However, you would benefit from the lowest possible cost. And there's also something to be said about relationships with suppliers. If you continuously switch suppliers based on an open bid and the lowest possible cost, you are not able to develop a relationship with that supplier, and that could lead to or you don't have a relationship with them. They don't down the road. They're say you need to you want to bargain on a lower price than what is quoted. You won't have a relationship from which to do that with. So that could hurt you as well. There's cost plus. You can go to a supplier and say, hey, if you give this sell it to us cost plus. Cost plus is the cost of the item plus a certain amount of markup for the supplier. That would be their contribution margin. We see this more so in heavy order volumes, so which allows for greater purchasing power. So say you own a Swiss chalet. Cost plus, you could go to a supplier and say, hey, I'm going to order 1 million chickens from you. You know what I mean? Can you give me cost plus? And that you would take the cost of the chicken, add a slight markup for the supplier, and then that's what would be the cost to you. But in restaurants, we don't, or not quite so like Swiss chalets, in that we order something in such great quantities. There's contract purchasing. So for with a certain supplier, you can prepare a contract that says between January 2017 and December 2017, we will purchase this product from you at this specific price and nowhere else. This can be kind of advantageous because if the supplier knows that you're only ordering from them, then they might be a little bit more inclined to help you out with the cost or the price of the items that you're purchasing. There's also food brokers. I've never seen this one in practice, but if we say we needed apples for whatever, we would tell the food brokers we would like to purchase apples. The food broker would then go in to different suppliers as a third party, get the cheapest price for you, mark it up a little bit for them, and then that's how you would purchase your apples. Again, we don't see that too much. There's also standing orders. Say you owned a sandwich shop and you knew that you used 100 buns a day for your sandwiches. You could have a standing order with a bakery for 100 buns a day, which means doesn't matter. You don't necessarily have to place an order with them. They have a standing order to come and automatically drop off 100 buns a day. You don't have to call them. You don't have to let them know that you want to order more. You have 100 bun standing order. They will continue to deliver you buns until you say stop. So yeah, if I was to tell you which one was probably the best or most advantageous, it would be the one-stop shopping, in the sense that when we do that, it's usually through a centralized purchasing system, and everything is just kept a lot cleaner and neat in terms of organization. And because centralized purchasing systems use purchasing power to stock their inventories, we're also getting a fairly low price as well. So, in my opinion, I would guide you towards the one-stop shop.